Sapiens by Yuval Harari, Part 4, The Scientific Revolution, Chapter 20, The End of Homo sapiens. This book began by presenting history as the next stage in the continuum of physics to chemistry to biology. Sapiens are subject to the same physical forces, chemical reactions, and natural selection processes that govern all living beings. Natural selection may have provided Homo sapiens with a much larger playing field than it has given to other organisms. But the field has still its boundaries. The implication has been that no matter what their efforts and achievements, sapiens are incapable of breaking free of their biologically determined limits. But at the dawn of 21st century, this is no longer true. Homo sapien is transcending those limits. It is now beginning to break the laws of natural selection, replacing them with the laws of intelligent design. For close to 4 billion years, every single organism on planet evolved subject to natural selection. Not even one was designed by an intelligent creator. The giraffe, for example, got its long neck thanks to the competition between archaic giraffe rather than to the whims of super-intelligent bee. Proto-giraffes who had longer necks had access to more food and consequently produced more offsprings than did those with shorter necks. Nobody, certainly not the giraffes, said a long neck would enable giraffes to munch leaves off the treetops. Let's extend it. The beauty of Darwin's theory is that it does not need to assume an intelligent designer to explain how giraffes ended up with the long necks. For billions of years, intelligent design was not even an option because there was no intelligence which could design things. Microorganisms, which until quite recently were the only living beings around that are capable of amazing feats. A microorganism belonging to one species can incorporate genetic codes from a completely different species into its cell and thereby gain new capabilities, such as resistance to antibiotics. Yet, the best we know, microorganisms have no consciousness, no aims in life, and no ability to plan ahead. At some stage, organisms such as giraffe, dolphins, chimpanzees, and Neanderthals evolved consciousness and the ability to plan ahead. But even if Neanderthals fantasized about fowls so fat and slow-moving, then he could just scoop them up whenever he was hungry. He had no way of turning that fantasy into reality. He had to hunt the birds that had been naturally selected. The first crack in the old regime appeared about 10,000 years ago. During the agricultural revolution, sapiens who dreamed of fat, slow-moving chickens discovered that if they mated the fattest hen with the slowest cock, some of their offsprings would be both fat and slow. If you mated those offsprings with each other, you could produce a line of fat, slow birds. It was a race of chickens unknown to nature, produced by intelligent design, not of the god but of human. Still, compared to an all-powerful deity, Homo sapiens has limited design skills. Sapiens could use selective breeding to detour around and accelerate the natural selection processes that normally affected chickens, but they could not introduce completely new characteristics that were absent from the genetic pool of wild chickens. In a way, the relationship between Homo sapiens and chickens was similar to many other symbiotic relationships that have so often arisen on their own in nature. Sapiens exerted peculiar selective pressures on chickens that caused the fat and slow ones to proliferate, just as the pollinating bees select flowers, causing the bright, colorful ones to proliferate. Today, the 4 billion year old regime of natural selection is facing a completely different challenge. In laboratories throughout the world, scientists are engineering living beings. They break the laws of natural selection with impunity, unbrindled even by the organism's original characteristics. Eduardo Ca, a Brazilian bio-artist, decided in 2000 to create a new work of art, a fluorescent green rabbit. CAC contacted a French laboratory and offered it a free to engineer a radiant bunny according to his specifications. The French scientist took a run-of-the-mill white rabbit's embryo, implanted it in its DNA, a gene taken from green fluorescent jellyfish, and voila, one green fluorescent rabbit for Le Monsieur. Cat named the rabbit Alba. it is impossible to explain the existence of Alba through the laws of natural selection. She is the product of intelligent design. She is also a harbinger of things to come. If the potential Alba signifies is realized in full, and if humankind does not annihilate itself meanwhile, the scientific revolution might prove itself far greater than a mere historical revolution. It may turn out to be the most important biological revolution since the appearance of life on Earth. After 4 billion years of natural selection, Alba stands at the dawn of new cosmic era in which life will be ruled by intelligent design. If this happens, the whole of human history up to the point might, with hindsight, be reinterpreted as a process of experimentation and apprenticeship that revolutionized the game of life. Such a process should be understood from a cosmic perspective of millions and billions of years rather than from a human perspective of millennia. Biologists the world over are locked in battle with intelligent design movement, which opposes the teachings of Darwinian evolution in schools and claims that biological complexities prove there must be a creator who thought out all these biological details in advance. The biologists are right about the past, but the proponents of intelligent design might ironically be right about the future. At the time of writing, the replacement of natural selection by intelligent design could happen in any 3 ways: through biological engineering, cyborg engineering, or engineering of an inorganic life. Of mice and men, biological engineering is a deliberate human intervention on the biological level. Example, implanting a gene aimed at modifying an organism's shape, capabilities, needs, or desires in order to realize some preconceived cultural idea, such as an artistic predilections of Eduardo Cac. There is nothing new about biological engineering per se. People have been using it for millennia in order to reshape themselves and those organisms. A simple example is castration. Humans have been castrating bulls for perhaps 10,000 years in order to create oxen. Oxens are less aggressive and are thus easier to train to pull plows. Humans also castrated their own young males to create soprano singers with enhancing and enchanting voices, and eunuchs who could safely be entrusted with overseeing the sultan's harems. But recent advances in our understanding of how organisms work down to the cellular and nuclear levels have opened up previously unimaginable possibilities. For instance, we can today not merely castrate a man, but also change his sex through surgical and hormonal treatments. But that's not all. Consider the surprise, disgust, and consternation that ensued when, in 1996, the following photograph appeared in the newspaper on the television. No Photoshop was not involved. It's an untouched photo of a real mouse on whose back scientists implanted cattle cartilage cells. The scientists were able to control the growth of the new tissue, shaping it in case into something that looks like a human ear. The process may soon enable scientists to manufacture artificial ears, which could then be implanted in humans. Even more remarkable wonders can be performed with genetic engineering, which is why it raises a host of ethical, political, and ideological issues. And it's not just pious monotheists who object that man should not usurp God's role. Many confirmed atheists are no less shocked by the idea that scientists are stepping into nature's shoes. Animal rights activists decry the sufferings caused to the lab animals in genetic engineering experiments and to the farmyard animals that are engineered in complete disregard of their needs and desires. Human rights activists are afraid that genetic engineering might be used to create supermen who will make serfs to the rest of us. Jeremiah offer apocalyptic visions of bio-dictatorships that will clone fearless soldiers and obedient workers. The prevailing feeling is that too many opportunities are opening too quickly, and that our ability to modify genes is outspacing our capacity for making wise and far-sighted use of the skill. The result is that We are at present using only a fraction of potential of genetic engineering. Most of the organisms now being engineered are those with the weakest political lobbies: plants, fungi, bacteria, and insects. For example, lines of E. coli, a bacterium that lives symbiotically in human gut, have been genetically engineered to produce biofuel. E. coli and several species of fungi have also been engineered to produce insulin, thereby lowering the cost of diabetes treatment. A gene extracted from Arctic fish has been inserted into potatoes, making the plant more frost resistant. A few mammals have also been subject to genetic engineering. Every year, the dairy industry suffers billions of dollars in damages due to mastitis, a disease that strikes dairy cow udders. Scientists are currently experimenting with genetically engineered cows whose milk contains lysostaphin, a biochemical that attacks the bacteria responsible for the disease. The pork industry, which has suffered from falling sales because consumers are wary of unhealthy fats in ham and bacon, has hopes for a still experimental line of pigs implanted with genetic material from a worm. The new genes cause the pigs to turn bad omega-6 fatty acids into a healthy cousin of omega-3. The next generation of genetic engineering will make pigs with a good fat look like child's play. Geneticists have managed to not merely to extend six-fold the average life expectancy of worms, but also to engineer genius mice that displays much improved memory and learning skills. Voles are small, strauss rodents resembling mice, and most varieties of voles are promiscuous. But there is one species in which boy and girl voles from lasting and monogamous relationships. Geneticists claim to have isolated the genes responsible for vole monogamy. If the addition of a gene can turn the vole Don Juan into a loyal and loving husband, are we far off from being able to genetically engineer not only the individual abilities of rodents but also their social structures? The return of Neanderthals. But geneticists do not only want to transform living lineages, they aim to revive extinct creatures as well. And not just dinosaurs, as the Jurassic Park. A team of Russian, Japanese, and Korean scientists has recently mapped the genome of ancient mammoths found frozen in Siberian ice. They now plan to take the fertilized egg cell of the present-day elephant, replace the elephantine DNA with the reconstructed mammoth DNA, and implant the egg in the womb of an elephant. After about 22 months, they expect the first mammoth in 5,000 years to be born. But why stop at mammoths? Professor George Church of Harvard University recently suggested that with the completion of Neanderthals' genome project, we can now implant reconstructed Neanderthals' DNA into the sapien ovum, thus producing the first Neanderthals child in 30,000 years. Church claimed that he could do the job for the paltry of $30 million. Several women have already volunteered to serve as surrogate mothers. Why do we need Neanderthals for? Some argue that if we could study live Neanderthals, we could answer some of the most nagging questions about the origin and uniqueness of Homo sapiens. By comparing a Neanderthals to the Homo sapiens brain and mapping out where their structures differ, perhaps we could identify what biological change produced consciousness as we experience it. There is an ethical reason too. Some have argued that if Homo sapiens was responsible for the extinction of Neanderthals, it has a moral duty to resurrect them. And having some Neanderthals around might be useful. Lots of industrialists would be glad to pay one Neanderthals to do a menial work of two sapiens. But why stop even at Neanderthals? Why not go back to God's drawing board and design a better sapien? The abilities, need, and desire of Homo sapiens have a genetic basis, and the sapiens genome is no more complex than the voles and mice. The mouse genome contains about 2.5 million nucleobases, the sapiens genome about 2.9 million bases, meaning that the latter is only 4% larger. In the medium range, Perhaps in a few decades, genetic engineering and other forms of biological engineering might enable us to make far reaching alterations not only to our physiology, immune system, and life expectancy, but also to our intellectual and emotional capacities. If genetic engineering can create genius minds, why not genius humans? If it can create monogamous wolves, why not humans hardwired to remain faithful to their partners? The cognitive revolution that turned Homo sapiens from an insignificant ape into a master of the world did not require any noticeable change in physiology or even in the size and external shape of the sapient brain. It apparently involved no more than a few small changes to the internal brain structure. Perhaps another small change would be enough to ignite a second cognitive revolution, create a completely new type of consciousness, and transform Homo sapiens into something altogether different. True, we still don't have the acumen to achieve this, but there seems to be no insurmountable technical barrier preventing us from producing superhumans. The main obstacle are the ethical and political objections that have slowed down research on humans. And no matter how convincing the ethical arguments may be, it is hard to see how they can hold back the next step for long, especially if what it is at stake is the possibility of prolonging human life indefinitely, conquering incurable diseases, and upgrading our cognitive and emotional abilities. What would happen, for example, if we develop a cure for Alzheimer's disease that, as a side benefit, could dramatically improve the memories of healthy people? Would anyone be able to halt the relevant research? And when the cure is developed, could any law enforcement agency limit it to Alzheimer's patient and prevent healthy people from using it to acquire super memories? It's unclear whether bioengineering could really resurrect the Neanderthals, but it would very likely bring down the curtain on Homo sapiens. Tinkering with our genes won't necessarily kill us, but we might fiddle with Homo sapiens to such an extent that we would no longer be Homo sapiens. Bionic life. There is another new technology which could change the laws of life cycle. Cyborg engineering. Cyborgs are beings which combine organic and inorganic parts, such as humans with bionic hands. In a sense, nearly all of us are bionic these days, since our natural senses and functions are supplemented by devices such as eyeglasses, pacemakers, orthotics, and even computers and mobile phones. We stand poised on the brink of becoming true cyborgs, of having inorganic features that are inseparable from our bodies, features that modify our abilities, desires, personalities, and identities. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, a US military research agency, is developing cyborgs out of insects. The idea is to implant electronic chips, detectors, and processors in the body of a fly or a cockroach, which will enable either human or an automatic operator to control the insect's movement remotely and to absorb and transmit information. Such a fly could be sitting on the wall of enemy headquarters, eavesdrop on the most secret conversations, and if it isn't caught first by the spider, could inform us exactly what the enemy is planning. In 2006, the US Naval Undersea Warfare Center reported its intention to develop cyborg shark, declaring NUWC developing a fish tag whose goal is behavior control of host animals via neural implants. The developers hope to identify underwater electromagnetic fields made by submarines and mines by exploiting the natural magnetic detecting capabilities of shark, which are superior to those of any man-made detectors. Sapiens too are being turned into cyborgs. The newest generation of hearing aids are sometimes referred to as bionic ears. The device consists of an implant that absorbs sound through a microphone located in the outer part of the ear. The implant filters the sound, identifies human voices, and translates them into electrical signals that are sent directly to the central auditory nerve and from there to the brain. Retina Implants, a government-sponsored German company, is developing a retinal prosthesis that may allow blind people to gain partial vision. It involves implanting a small microchip inside the patient's eye. Photocells absorbs light falling on the eye and transforms it into an electrical energy, which stimulates the intact nerve cells in the retina. The nervous impulses from these cells stimulate the brain, where they are translated into sight. At present, the technology allows patients to orientate themselves in space, identify letters, and even recognize faces. Jess Sullivan, an American electrician, lost both arms up to the shoulder in 2001 accident. Today, he uses two bionic arms, courtesy of Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. The special features of Jess's new arms is that they are operated by thought alone. Neural signals arriving from Jess's brain are translated by microcomputers into electrical commands, and the arms move. When Jess wants to raise his arms, he does what any normal person unconsciously does, and the arms raises. These arms can perform a much more limited range of movements than organic arms, but they enable Jess to carry out simple daily functions. A similar bionic arm has been recently outfitted for Claudia Michel, an American soldier who lost her arms in the motorcycle accident. Scientists believe that we will soon have bionic arms that will not only move when willed to move, but will also be able to transmit signals back to the brain, thereby enabling amputees to regain even the sensation of touch. At present, these bionic arms are a poor replacement of our organic originals, but they have the potential for unlimited development. Bionic arms, for example, can be made far more powerful than their organic kin, making even a boxing champion feel like a weakling. Moreover, bionic arms have the advantage that they can be replaced every few years or detached from the body and operated at a distance. Scientists at Duke University in North Carolina have recently demonstrated this with rhesus monkey, whose brain have been implanted with electrodes. The electrodes gather signals from the brain and transmit them to external devices. The monkeys have been trained to control detached bionic arms and legs through thought alone. One monkey, named Aurora, learned to thought control a detached bionic arm while simultaneously moving her two organic arms. Like some Hindu goddess, Aurora now has 3 arms, and her arms can be located in different rooms or even cities. She can sit in her North Carolina lab, scratch her back with one hand, scratch her head with the second hand, and simultaneously steal a banana in New York. Another rhesus monkey, Idioa, won world fame in 2008 when she thought controlled a pair of bionic legs in Kyoto, Japan, from her North Carolina chair. The legs were 20 times Adoya's weight. Locked-in syndrome is a condition in which a person loses all or nearly all her ability to move any part of her body. While her cognitive abilities remain intact, patients suffering from this syndrome have up till now been able to communicate with the outside world only through small eye movements. However, a few patients have had brain signal gathering electrodes implanted in their brain. Efforts are being made to translate such signals not merely into movements but also into words. If the experiments succeed, locked-in patients could finally speak directly with the outside world, and we might eventually be able to use the technology to read other people's mind. Yet, all of these projects are currently under development. The most revolutionary is the attempt to devise a direct two-way brain-computer interface that will allow computers to read the electrical signals of the human brain, simultaneously transmitting signals that the brain can read in turn. What if such interfaces are used to directly link a brain to the internet or directly link several brains to each other, thereby creating a sort of inter-brain net? What might happen to human memory, human consciousness, and human identity if the brain has direct access to a collective memory bank? In such a situation, one cyborg could, for example, retrieve the memories of another, not hear about them, not read about them in an autobiography, not imagine them, but directly remember them as if they were his own, on her own. What happens to concepts such as self and gender identity when minds become collective? How could you know thyself or follow your dreams if the dreams is not in your mind but in some collective reservoir of aspirations? Such a cyborg would no longer be human or even organic. It would be something completely different. It would be so fundamentally another kind of being that we cannot even grasp the philosophical, psychological, and political implications. The third way to change the laws of life is to engineer completely inorganic beings. The most obvious examples are computer programs and the computer viruses that can undergo independent evolution. The field of genetic programming is today one of the most interesting spots in the computer science world. It tries to emulate the methods of genetic evolution. Many programmers dream of creating programs that could learn and evolve completely independently of its creator. In this case, the programmer would be primum mobile, the first mover, but his creation would be free to evolve in directions neither its maker nor any other human could ever envisage. A prototype of such a program could already exist. It's called a computer virus. As it spreads through the internet, the virus replicates itself millions upon millions of times, all the while being chased by predatory antivirus programs and competing with other viruses for the place in the cyberspace. One day, when the virus replicates itself, a mistake occurs, a computerized mutation. Perhaps the mutation occurs because the human engineer programmed the virus to make occasional random replication mistakes. Perhaps the mutation was due to a random error. If by chance the modified virus is better at evading antivirus programs without losing its ability to invade other computers, it will spread through cyberspace. If so, the mutants will survive and reproduce. As time goes by, cyberspace would be full of new viruses that nobody engineered and that undergo non-organic evolution. Are these living creatures? It depends on what you mean by living creature. They have certainly been produced by a new evolutionary process, completely independent of the laws and limitations of organic evolution. Imagine another possibility. Suppose you could back up your brain to a portable hard drive and then run it into your laptop. Would the laptop be able to think and feel just the way Sapiens does? If so, would it be you or someone else? What if computer programmers could create an entirely new but digital mind, composed of computer codes, complete with sense of self, consciousness and memory? If you ran the program on your computer, would it be a person? If you deleted it, could it be charged with a murder? We might soon have the answer to such questions. The Human Brain Project, founded in 2005, hopes to recreate a complete human brain inside a computer, with electronic circuits in the computer emulating neural networks in the brain. The project's director has claimed that, if funded properly, within a decade or two, we could have an artificial human brain inside a computer that could talk and behave very much as human does. If successful, that would mean that after 4 billion years of milling around inside small world of organic compounds, life will suddenly break into the vastness of inorganic realm, ready to take us shapes beyond our wildest dreams. Not all scholars agree that mind works in a manner analogous to today's digital computers, and if it doesn't, present-day computers would not be able to simulate it. Yet, it would be foolish to categorically dismiss the possibility before giving it a try. In 2003, the project received a grant of Euro 1 billion from the European Union. The singularity. Presently, only a tiny fraction of these opportunities have been realized. Yet, the world of 2014 is already a world in which culture is realizing itself from the shackles of biology. Our ability to engineer not merely the world around us, but above all the world inside our bodies and minds is developing at a breakneck speed. More and more spheres of activity are being shaken out of their complacent ways. Lawyers need to rethink issues of piracy, privacy, and identity. Governments are faced with rethinking matters of healthcare and equality. Sports associations and educational institutions need to redefine fair play and achievement. Pension funds and labor markets should readjust to the world in which 60 might be a new 30. They must all deal with the conundrums of bioengineering, cyborgs, and inorganic life. Mapping the first human genome required 15 years and $3 billion. Today, you can map a person's DNA within a few weeks and at a cost of few $100s. The era of personalized medicine that matches treatment to DNA, has begun. The family doctor could soon tell you to a greater certainty that you face high risk of liver cancer, whereas you need not worry too much about heart attack. She could determine that a popular medication that helps 92% of the people is useless to you, and you should instead take another pill, fatal to many people but just right for you. The road to near perfect medicine stands before us. However, with improvements in medical knowledge will come new ethical conundrums. Ethicists and legal experts are already wrestling with the thorny issue of privacy and it relates to DNA. As it relates to DNA, would insurance companies be entitled to ask for a DNA scans and to raise premiums if they discover a genetic tendency to reckless behavior? Would we be required to fax our DNA rather than our CV to potential employers? Could an employer favor a candidate because his DNA looks better? Or could we sue in such cases for a genetic discrimination? Could a company that develops a new creature or a new organ register a patent on its DNA sequences? It is obvious that one can own a particular chicken, but can one own an entire species? Such dilemmas are dwarfed by ethical, social, and political implications of Gilgamesh project and of our potential new abilities to create superhumans. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, governments' medical programs throughout the world, national health insurance programs, and national constitutions worldwide recognize that humane society ought to give all its members fair medical treatment and keep them in a relatively good health. That was all well and good as long as medicine was chiefly concerned with preventing illness and healing the sick. What might happen once medicine becomes preoccupied with enhancing human abilities? Would all humans be entitled to such enhanced abilities, or would there be only new superhuman elites? Our late modern world prides itself on recognizing for the first time in history the basic equality for all humans. Yet it might be poised to create the most unequal of all societies. Throughout history, the upper class always claimed to be smarter, stronger, and generally better than the underclass. They were usually deluding themselves. A baby born to a poor peasant family was likely to be as intelligent as the crown prince. With the help of new medical capabilities, the pretensions of the upper class might soon become an objective reality. This is not science fiction. Most science fiction's plot describe a world in which sapiens identical to us enjoy superior technology such as the light-speed spaceship and the laser guns. The ethical and political dilemmas central to these plots are taken from our own world, and they merely recreate our emotional and social tensions against the futuristic backdrop. Yet, the real potential of future technologies is to change Homo sapiens itself, including our emotions and desires, and not merely our vehicles and weapons. What is spaceship compared to an eternally young cyborg who does not breed and has no sexuality, who can share thoughts directly with other beings, whose abilities to focus and remember are 1,000 times greater than our own, and who is never angry or sad, but has emotions and desires that we cannot begin to imagine? Science fiction rarely describes such a future because an accurate description is by definition incomprehensible. Producing a film about the life of some superhuman cyborg is akin to producing Hamlet for an audience of Neanderthals. Indeed, the future masters of world will probably be more different from us than we are from Neanderthals, whereas we and the Neanderthals are the least humans. Our inheritors will be godlike. Physicist defines the Big Bang as a singularity. It is a point at which all the known laws of nature did not exist. Time too did not exist. It is thus meaningless to say that anything existed before the Big Bang. We may be fast approaching a new singularity, when all the concepts that give meaning to our world, me, you, men, women, love, and hate, will become irrelevant. Anything happening beyond that point is meaningless to us. The Frankenstein Prophecy. In 1880, Mary Shelley published Frankenstein, the story of a scientist who tries to create a superior being and instead creates a monster. In the last 2 centuries, the story has been told over and over again in countless variations. It has become a central pillar of our new scientific mythology. At the first sight, the Frankenstein story appears to warn us that if we try to play God and engineer life, we will be punished severely. Yet, the story has a deeper meaning. The image of capitalism, of Islam, or of feminism. The answer to this question might send them careening in entirely different directions. Most people prefer not to think about it. Even the field of bioethics prefers to address another question. What is it forbidden to do? It is acceptable to carry out genetic experiments on living human beings, on aborted fetuses, on stem cells. It is ethical to clone sheep and chimpanzees. And what about humans? all of these important questions, but it is naive to imagine that we might simply hit the brakes and stop the scientific projects that are upgrading Homo sapiens into a different kind of being. For these projects are inextricably meshed together with Gilgamesh project. Ask scientists why they study the genome, or try to connect a brain to a computer, or try to create a mind inside a computer. 9 out of 10 times you will get the same standard answer. We are doing it to cure diseases and save human lives, even though the implications of creating a mind inside a computer are far more dramatic than curing psychiatric illness. This is a standard justification given because nobody can argue with it. This is why the Gilgamesh project is the flagship of science. It serves to justify everything science does. Dr. Frankenstein piggybacks on the shoulders of Gilgamesh. Since it is impossible to stop Gilgamesh, it is also impossible to stop Dr. Frankenstein. The only thing we can try to do is to influence the direction scientists are taking. But since we might soon be able to engineer our desires too, the real question facing us is not what do we want to become, but what do we want to want. Those who are not spooked by this question probably haven't given it enough thought. The last and the final part of the book is afterword, that is, the animal that became God. 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens was still an insignificant animal minding its own business in the corner of Africa. In the following millennia, it transformed itself into a master of the entire planet and the terror of the ecosystem. Today, it stands on the verge of becoming a god, poised to acquire not only eternal youth, but also divine abilities of creation and destruction. Unfortunately, the Sapiens regime on Earth has so far produced little than we can be proud of. We have mastered our surroundings, increased food production, built cities, established empires, and created far-flung trade networks. But did we decrease the amount of sufferings in the world? Time and again, massive increases in the human power did not necessarily improve the well-being of individual sapiens and usually caused immense misery to other animals. In the last few decades, we have at last made some real progress as far as human condition is concerned, with the reduction of famine, plague, and war. Yet, the situation of other animals is deteriorating more rapidly than ever before, and the improvement in a lot of humanity is too recent and fragile to be certain of. Moreover, despite the astonishing things that humans are capable of doing, we remain unsure of our goals and we seem to have discontented as ever. We have advanced from canoes to galleys to steamships to space shuttles, but nobody knows where we are going. We are more powerful than ever before, but we have very little idea about what to do with that power. Worse still, humans seems to be more irresponsible than ever, self-made gods with only the laws of physics to keep us company. We are accountable to no one. We are consequently wreaking havoc on our fellow animals and the surrounding ecosystem, seeking little more than our own comfort and amusement, yet never finding satisfaction. Is there anything more dangerous than dissatisfied and irresponsible gods who don't know what they really want? This brings me to the end of the book, which indeed was thought-provoking and very informative, and everyone must go through it at least once.